We're back with a part 2 of gripes that I have with Borderlands 3. Now the first video I made, I did mention a few points that were basically just me clinging at straws, but also just things that just generally annoyed me throughout the game, and recently going back to Borderlands 2 really opened my eyes to things that are really wrong with this game that I just don't encounter in Borderlands 2. And I thought I'd go through even more gripes I have with Borderlands 3, so you better be ready, because I'm going to fucking open your mind. I don't need to waste any more time, you know what the top 5 list is, let's go. So, here are the top 5 things that pierce my rectum about Borderlands 3. Number 1, it's not really a surprise to any people, but it's the Annointments. Now, I have played so much of these games, right? And one thing that I never thought I'd have in my way is a fucking Destiny mechanic. Are you mad? Anointments on a weapon. It's so bad that even going into the bloody Borderlands save editor, which some people think is sacrilege and is like punishable by death, you can't even alter the anointments on a weapon. And you know, if you can't edit it in basically what is Gibbs save editor, it's fucked. For example, I wanted to get a Monarch for my Moze because I saw a Bottomless Mag Moze by Killer6 and he really recommended using the Monarch. Now I thought to myself, isn't this just a worse version of the Shredder Fire? I've got both of these weapons now and the Shredder Fire just does better. Anointment, motherfucker. So here is just a quick list of the god roll you can get on the Monarch, courtesy of lootlemon.com, not sponsored, but it's a very sick website. If you've never heard of it, you should really check it out. So, the Mayhem level 10 version of this with all the god roll anointments on it is a plus 47% damage, plus 21% fire rate, plus 60% melee damage with a 1.5 times weapon zoom. Now, this type of gun is known as a bipod gun. Now, this doesn't have a secondary fire mode, it goes into a bipod, so that's how you get most of your damage off. You get really close to an enemy, you put your bipod up, and then you just slam them with like multiple bullets. Now, the reason why this is so fucked is because of the anointments that are on it. My Shredder Fire just happened to have better anointments on it than the Monarch. Now, if I could get a god roll of each of these weapons, yes, the Monarch would be a hell of a lot better, but the fact that I didn't have a god roll on either of these weapons and the weaker weapon was still better told me in my mind that the Shredder Fire was better, but I didn't know that the anointments could change the gun so much. For example, me looking on Killer6's video, I noticed he was absolutely fucking melting bosses. Now I know this is probably because of the relic he had on, which is from the Hammerlock DLC, the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge, you've probably heard of it, but I got the Monarch and I used it and it just did fuck all to any enemies, and I thought maybe it's because of the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge. Everyone uses the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge. You don't use the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge? How do you not use the Pearl of Ineffable? No. It's because of the fucking anointments, and you have to god roll this weapon just to be able to get it to be viable. And the fact that I farmed, I think it was about 12 Monarchs, and some of the stats were good, right? But they were still not god roll stats. And if you've ever played Destiny, you know exactly what I mean by this, because you have to basically farm a weapon over and over and over and over again until you get one that's just like slightly better than the last one. You just continue to do that and over again. Now don't get me wrong, Borderlands 2 also had this mechanic with the Unkempt Herald. Now if you know, the deeper double penetrating Unkempt Herald was by far the best version of the Unkempt Herald you can get. Now unfortunately it's not in this game. The best one you can get is the packing gratifying Unkempt Herald. But the thing is that anointments are a thing on every single legendary weapon, and also a lot of other weapons, but mainly on legendary weapons they're the most important. And getting a deeper in Borderlands 2 was hard enough, right? So now, not only do you have to get the Pack and Gratifying Unkempt Herald, you also have to get the Pack and Gratifying Unkempt Herald with 200% weapon damage and 122 splash damage. So if I don't get a Pack and Gratifying Unkempt Herald, and I still get the perks, it's not a god roll. Getting a deeper in Borderlands 2 meant you had the best version and you now had to stop farming. Now even getting the best version of a gun doesn't even mean you've got the best version of a gun. You have to continuously farm until you get a god roll of a god version of a weapon. You see how this doesn't make sense? It's just adding too many layers to this, and that's not only just with one weapon, it's with every single weapon you've got at the max mayhem level, and also your shield, and also your class mod. It just adds up, and it just makes the game tedious to play. Now, Adding to the fact that Borderlands 3's legendaries just really aren't as satisfying to get as Borderlands 2's legendaries, you can probably see it from my previous video. I farmed 2 legendaries at the beginning of the game, and the actual audio that came out of my mouth was something like, oh my god, I got it. You will never see me saying something like that in Borderlands 3. Like, I will genuinely just be like, oh right, legendaries dropped. Or I'll check what that is in a minute. I'll just kill the rest of these enemies. I will never get excited. Even if it is a god roll, I don't get excited. So, added to that, will I want to farm a gun multiple times? I just don't think so. Number 2, now I did talk about this in my previous video, kind of, but I didn't really go into detail about it. You don't feel like you matter in the story, apart from one cutscene with Troy in it where you get phase locked. And Amara, who's a fucking siren, is never mentioned in the story where the main villains leech siren powers. And there's also in a story with sirens being heavily involved and part of this lore with the story. Also, all Crimson Raiders to the bridge. So this story, yes, everyone knows this story sucks. But the main thing for me was feeling like I was watching a story rather than being part of a story. It felt like I was listening to other people have a conversation whilst just being stood there. That feeling when you feel like a secondary character despite doing the majority of the work in a story that's supposed to be about you really shows how out of touch they were, but also the fact that just cutscenes in this game kind of suck. Yes, in Borderlands 2, there were cutscenes where you didn't matter. The difference was, there was 3 in the game. There was one at the very beginning, the one in the middle, and then one at the very, very end. Now, in 2 of them, they mention the Vault Hunter by name as they are stood there.
Lilith, kill the Vault Hunter. We've got a date to keep with the warrior.
Wait a sec, let me. You don't want to touch this thing right now, trust me.
Lilith!
Where the hell were you guys 5 minutes ago? If it weren't for the Vault Hunter, we'd all be dead.
And in the first one, you can see all 4 of the Vault Hunters in the introductory bit. Now, the fact that most of this story is basically just Lilith saying, come to the bridge, or talk to Lilith.
Vault Hunter, come up to Sanctuary.
Talk to Lilith.
Time to talk to Lilith.
And then you feel important, because you're the only one who's appeared there when she says all Crimson Raids to the bridge, yet in contrast, when you're in any cutscene, you feel like you don't matter. But wait, there's one cutscene where you do matter, and don't just feel like you're stood at the sidelines while watching people do all this shit. It's weird. It's almost like they haven't kept to their own formula 100%, even if that formula's bad. You would have at least known that this is just how it is. What is this cutscene? Oh yeah, Troy's cutscene where he fucking phase locks you. Why is this the only cutscene in the entire game where you actually feel like you're part of the story and not just stood by? I don't really know. Why did they include it? I don't really know. Most of the time I just skip it anyway, but it's still fucking weird, and even I on my first playthrough questioned this. I was kind of like, so I've stood by as every single other thing has happened, so I stood by as Lilith got her siren powers taken off her, I stood by as Maya got her siren powers stuck off her, I stood by as Maya got fucking killed, but for some reason when I enter the Jacobs estate and I walk through a fucking door, randomly this Troy just phase locks me and starts monologuing. Yeah, what the fuck is this? Now all that's bad enough as it is, but when you play Amara, you really get taken out of the game. When you play as a siren, in a game where the main villains leech siren powers, and you have watched in 2 cutscenes where they've done exactly that, yet not one of the cutscenes they even look in your direction. Now, I know this is done because of the fact that you can play as 4 Vault Hunters and 3 of them aren't sirens and they don't want to make a specific cutscene for each character, yada yada yada. But just think about it in your head for a minute. If you're a person thinking about this not only canonically but just from a story point perspective, you will just be questioning every single process that happens when you play as Amara. Hang on a sec, why if they just leached Lilith's powers yet they've just let me stand here when I'm a fucking siren? Hang on a sec, how come they've leached Maya's power right in front of me and killed her yet they've left me just doing nothing and just left me standing? Then when Troy phase locks you, you know perfectly well that he could fucking leech you right then and there. He did the exact same thing to Maya. He touched her and she just fucking disintegrated. Why doesn't he decide to do that to you? I don't know. What is this fucking writing, man? The only thing I can really put it down to is just Canonically, it would never matter if you play as a Siren, because from a gameplay perspective, it would make sense that you are a Siren, but from a story perspective, it would just screw everything over if it actually acknowledged that you're a Siren. Did the same thing in Borderlands 2 when Jack kills Roland and then he decides to kidnap Lilith, even though if you play as Maya, you're a more powerful Siren stood straight in front of him. Number 3 is actually a big argument I've seen with the community trying to discuss what's the best thing to actually add, and it's gonna be the fact that there was no pearlescence, no seraphs, gems, or rainbow weapons in Borderlands 3. Now, this is actually a weird one, because I've seen a lot of people saying they would like it added, and a lot of people saying they wouldn't like it to be added. And some other people saying they should add completely different rarities because they've overdone pearlescence. Rainbow rarities was only just because Borderlands 2 was phasing out, and they just wanted to make some funny weapons. Gemstone weapons were part of a very specific DLC, and seraphs were because of defeating these massive raid bosses that aren't even in the games anymore. So, yes, I see everyone's point. I see the fact that legendaries should be at the top because balancing issues really stop guns that were greater in concept like pearlescence from actually being greater. Things like the Bearcat. I don't understand why the Bearcat was a thing, but there we go. Only having legendaries made it so Gearbox only had to focus on one specific type of top weapon. They didn't have to worry about all these different types of weapons, but I feel like the problem that they have isn't with adding better rarities, it's balancing these better rarities. Yes, Seraph weapons were a hell of a lot better, even though they weren't as rare as pearlescence, and in some instances they were just straight up way easier to farm than some legendaries and pearlescence, and there was no point in using the same legendaries that they were based off, like the interfaces for the conference call for example, or any pearlescence at all. That makes sense from that point of view, which is why some people think they should just balance what they have and not fuck up this massive pool of weapons by adding more that are rarer and harder to get but aren't worth it. But also, this just makes the actual sandbox a hell of a lot smaller. You know how exciting it was to find out that you got the best weapons in the game, these massive pool of legendary weapons, and then your friend comes and goes, you know there are like 2 better rarities of weapons, right? I couldn't tell you how weird that feeling was of just being like, wait, there's more? There's other things to do? Wait, what do you mean a raid boss? What do you mean there's something that's so rare that you've not found one yet? You've played this game for days. Things like that in Borderlands 3 just lack. The fact that you can get a legendary gun that's one of the best in the game. Straight off the bat, the world pool is really massive, and the fact that you get legendaries all the fucking time. It makes things like that just not feel exciting anymore. Now I can admit, I was 12 years old when I first played this game, and I'm coming up on 21 this year. Things in games just don't excite you like they did when you were a child, but there are games that really capture this. Destiny 2 has got one of the best loot pools that I've seen where you actually get excited when you get things, like raid reward items, things that aren't easy to obtain and technically aren't better than other things that are in the game that are a lot easier to get, but just the feeling of actually getting that weapon after so long of trying to get it really made me feel accomplished. Now I know I mentioned before with the Annointments, I don't want to farm these legendaries all the time. It's the way that they did it. Imagine when they added these takedown raid type things at the end without mentioning it to anyone, and as long as hackers didn't just go into the code and find out that there was different types of legendaries or different fucking weapons that were better rarity. Imagine getting to the end. There's a massive chest, and it's not just a red chest, it's rarer than a red chest, and you open it and a pearlescent weapon dropped. Imagine how much the community would have just fucking lost their shit. Everyone talking about it, everyone going, pearlescents are in the game, they never told us, they never added it. That was what they needed to really, in my opinion, bring the game back and make things like that exciting again. Legendaries can be legendaries like they are in Borderlands 3, not very exciting to get, kind of drop very often, but then you can have seraphs or pearlescent weapons that just are so rare, but really make you feel like excited to get things like that again. Fuck it, for all I know, pearlescents could actually be in the game, but they're so rare that no one's ever found one yet. Obviously that wouldn't happen. People just hack into game codes too often now. You would definitely know like 7 years in advance. Number 4. Now I mentioned this one in my first ever Borderlands 3 video I made on impressions of the game. The UI and the maps kind of suck, in my opinion. Now, It's hard to really get into my head why this sucks so much. In theory, they should be a lot better. It'd been a long time since the last game had came out. They've updated to Unreal Engine 4. There was loads of other quality of life updates that completely overhauled the game. Why is the main part of the game that you interact with just so bad? I've noticed a lot of times when I'm trying to equip a weapon and it just straight up doesn't equip. I have to find myself clicking it over and over and over again. Now, I know might just be a problem on PC because of the mouse. The cursor doesn't really move as well as it would with a controller. I've tried it, it kind of actually does work a lot better with a controller. But that's what I mean. You can't just expect me to just use a controller if I'm playing on PC. I shouldn't really have to compromise that much. Scrolling through just takes the piss compared to Borderlands 2. It takes up a lot more space. As you can probably tell when you play Borderlands 2, the UI is very congested when you go into your menu. It's all in one big space. Now, Borderlands 3, they made it a lot wider scale. Instead of taking up just basically the middle of your screen, it now goes to the left, the top right, the top left, the bottom right, the bottom left, the middle. All of it's taken up with stuff. So you've got the left, which is taken up by your guns, your shield, your class mod, etc. Bottom's where the ammo is. Top left is where your inventory, and you can scroll over to the map and all the skill points and things. And then at the right is where your actual weapons are, with your character being in the middle. You look down and you holding your little echo device. It looks cooler, but I don't think they went for actual, like, use over what it just looks like, because it takes a lot of tedious amounts of work to scroll through this thing, and it's something that when you're playing Borderlands 2 you never think about. You don't really think about the UI, what you're doing, you just get on with it. And even when you think about it a tiny bit in Borderlands 3, that just shows to me that it's a lot worse. The fact that I didn't think about it at all in the second game, yet now I'm thinking about it a bit, going, why is this doing this? Why am I doing this so much? Why do I have to go off the menu or equip a gun a few times? Why is the map a lot weirder than I thought it would be? And that's what I need to talk about next. The map. The map in this game is a lot worse than in Borderlands 2's map. Now, if you look at them subjectively, Borderlands 3's should just be better. It's a 3D map, you can move it about, and yes, the quality of life for that is a lot easier in very specific circumstances. There was a few times when I'm playing Borderlands 2 and I'm like, is this above me, is this below me, how can I get here, is there a little wall in the way that's only really shown with a tiny little line? Borderlands 3 really gets rid of that. If there's a wall or a massive bit of the map you have to scale or go around, you really know. But the problem is that the maps in this game are so big and cluttered with so much stuff that's on the map, I find myself having to open the map multiple times just to find out where I'm going. Now, this is probably attributed to the fact that Borderlands 2's maps in general are a lot flatter. If you look on the map and you see a little diamond, you know, okay, well, I have to walk forwards, take a little left, and I'm probably there. Well, in Borderlands 3, if I see a little diamond and it's up to the left, if I go on my map, I might have to go a completely different direction or a completely different fucking elevation just to get to where I'm going. Now, this is probably attributed to the fact that Borderlands 3's maps are a lot bigger and all that, but it's just a really big gripe. I find myself opening the map constantly, and it's something to get used to. But you say that and then you think that I've been playing this game for 3 years now, and I constantly just say, oh, I just need to get used to it. Is it really something I have to get used to if I've been playing the game for 3 years straight? Is it really something I have to get used to? I know a lot of people won't agree with me on this one, which is why it is a gripe. It's just a personal thing that I find when I'm playing the game. Let me know if that's actually something that anyone else experiences, or if I'm just going fucking mad. Now we're saving the best to last, boys. Coming in at number 5 is Focking Ava. Get this fucking skanky bitch out of my face. Get her out of my bloody face. I think you know a character is hated when, like, every single fucking person in the community collectively just wants to shove her off a cliff. It really attests to a character. It would be cool if, like, you know, Gearbox actually made a character like her that you really wanted to fucking hate. They would have done a tip-top fucking job. But the fact that they wanted you to like this motherfucker? I'm sorry. Who? Yeah, well, seeing how new Tales from the Borderlands has got, I'm really not surprised with how they can write shit characters so seamlessly. Not really a gripe, that's just fucking facts. The only thing that would make Ava's character better, if in the Krieg DLC, there was a side mission where Krieg would cut Ava's head off and fucking shove it down his throat and eat it, because that would just make my day. And it's even weirder because Ava is like a main character now, unfortunately, actually kill me. But the fact that they writ tedious soldiers better than this character, like, New Tales from the Borderlands is objective, it's just shit. It's a terrible game, Don't play it. Save your time. Easy review. Okay, guys, we're going to be reviewing Tales from the Borderlands today. 2 out of 10, don't buy it. Shh. Right, there we go. Well, that's the review over. Let's get back onto the topic. TDO soldiers are the only thing that saved me from wanting to actually off myself while playing this game. I basically just decided to quit near the end and just search up a compilation of TDO soldiers on YouTube, and it made me actually laugh out loud for the first time in about 6 years in a Borderlands game. So that's really cool.
Where is it? I don't know. How many places can you hide the entrance to a vault? Yeah, should be conspicuous, right?
Or are they? I mean, this could be the vault entrance right here.
Try it.
Come on, do it. Cram it in there!
Negative. Not the vault entrance.
Well, it's worth a shot.
The only thing I need to do now is get a complete Torg DLC again and actually hire the same guy, Anthony Birch, who actually writ Torg last time, make him so he doesn't just say motherfucker all the time, and make him so he doesn't just go meedly mow and do explosion sounds. And I'm really getting off topic, aren't I? It wasn't a surprise that Ava was going to be on this list. It's not really an opinion, it's kind of just a collective thought that everyone has. No one really likes Ava. Now, it's something I was going to debate putting on this list, so it's so well known. It's about as well known as using the grog nozzle and the deeper. Ava being hated, Salvador grog nozzle deeper. The community knows this about as well as anything else. It's ingrained into their skin, like literally ingrained into the seriously, I can't get it, guys. I can't get this off my skin. The only thing that could really save Ava and this whole franchise's story from declining in the rapid way it is now, especially with new Tales from the Borderlands being fucking canon, is if we wake up in Borderlands 4 from a nasty nightmare. Claptrap wakes us up, Maya's there to greet us, Handsome Jack is still dead, but you know who isn't? The characters we actually cared about. You know who isn't there? Fucking Ava. Lilith never left the planet, she's still here. Gunzerker's still, hey Axton, how you doing? Whoa, Gage isn't a wedding planner? Yo, Krieg, yo man. They're like, yo bro, it's 2007, we're on Halo 3, we're about to have a clan war, you wanna join? And I'm like, yo. But nah, on the real, I just hope that they either make it so we can have a non-canonical part of Borderlands 3 happen, or just have it not happen at all. Have like the whole 6-year span just not be canon. I don't really know how it can work. I remember Eruption Fang made a video with New Tales from the Borderlands, basically just being a movie, or a director making a movie. That actually is a pretty good idea. But Borderlands 3, I really don't know how they can make it non-canon. Unfortunately, there's so much that actually happens in this game, it's impossible for it to be non-canon. The only thing I could think of is the Watcher being involved in Borderlands 4, and he brings back Athena, and that's an alternate reality or something. Either that, or, you know, they could just completely retcon Borderlands 3 and bring Maya back somehow. But, you know, I'm probably living in an alternate universe now. I'm trying to ask for things that are probably never going to happen. And honestly, Gearbox aren't really going to retort any of the things they've made or any of the changes they've had, because that would show weakness in them actually telling people that they had a shit story and that their storytelling's really bad. And also the writers would have to admit that they've made big mistakes. And I don't think they've got that much balls to actually tell people that they've made genuine mistakes throughout the whole story. I genuinely don't think that they will ever admit that they made a shit story. I just don't think it's going to happen. And unfortunately, Borderlands 4 will have to be a massive success in the story. Otherwise, I don't really think there's a lot more for me in the lore of Borderlands. And I might just stick to just playing the games just to have fun and less about the actual story. For someone who was so invested in all these characters and was so invested in the story, for me to get pulled out of it so much so quickly over the past few years is really jarring. And Anthony Birch leaving as lead writer really didn't help this franchise get any better. I was excited for Borderlands 3 and I was excited for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and I'm gonna be excited for the next thing that Borderlands are doing. But if they continue to do these stories, then I don't really know what's going to happen. I just really hope that the future for Borderlands is bright in terms of their story. I'm really optimistic. I'm that type of person who will think it's going to get better, and if it doesn't, that's unfortunate. And honestly, we'll still just have Borderlands 2 to go back to. I mean, think about it. Perfect story, perfect gameplay, all that shit, so I'm happy. So that's been my gripes for Borderlands 3 Part 2. I've got so many gripes about so many different games in the Borderlands franchise. I could keep making videos like this. I'm planning on releasing my next day for Borderlands 2's Legendaries only gameplay very soon. It just takes a long time to edit something like that. I actually recorded over 4 hours of footage, so actually trying to edit that into half an hour segments is kind of hard, so just bear with me on that one if you enjoyed that. If you enjoyed this one, however, make sure to like and subscribe, all that good mess. I don't really need to repeat it, every single person says it, and I will see you in the next video, guys. Peace.